Happy Thursday, Facebook friends. Welcome back to Facebook. I'm Angie Garza, Director of Professional Learning and Educational Services at ROE 47, serving Lee, Ogle, and Whiteside counties. And if you're joining us back here on Thursday, you'll know that it's time for another edition of Teacher Talk. And we are shepherding in the month of May here in Lee, Ogle, and Whiteside counties. The grass is looking greener, the sun is looking brighter, and we are racing to the finish line of the 2022-23 school year in all 24 of our public schools and districts. And so as we look to close out the school year here, hard to believe, we are taking a moment, as always, to celebrate the great things that are happening in our three-county area. And so today, you're going to join Stacy and I in having a conversation with two very incredible administrators who we've had the pleasure of working with all year and even last year in our work on school improvement. And so we're excited to get these conversations started with AFC School District. But before we do that, I want to say happy May, happy end of school year to my friend, colleague, and co-host, Ms. Stacy Dingus, Digital Teaching and Learning Specialist. Hey, Ms. Stacy, welcome to May and happy celebrating all the great things that are happening in our three-county area.
Good morning, Angie. Happy May for sure. And can't even believe that we are at the end of another school year. Ironic, today's conversation about school improvement is actually how I met you and started working with you and the ROE several years ago when I was a teacher, and we were working at Amboy Junior High School on the school improvement plan. So I'm excited about this conversation to hear it kind of from the other end. Small world, the school that I actually graduated from years ago, Franklin Center. So I'm excited to get this conversation going with two kind of young rising stars of principals in our area. So let's go and have a great conversation, Angie.
Rising stars indeed. Stacy, you mentioned that school improvement is such, it's an important conversation for us. I think if we reflect on the last several years, there's a lot that's changed in our world. And so how do we reconvene? How do we circle back to conversations about teaching and learning? How do we empower teacher, student, and parent voices? And so as we welcome our rising stars to our Teacher Talk platform this morning, these two have done all the things. And so we're anxious to hear more from them. So I want to welcome, I'm going to start with Jenna Burkett, who is the elementary principal in the AFC School District. And Jenna and I have a long history with one another, and it's always such a pleasure to work with her on all things education because she is very inspiring and insightful. And we would also like to welcome back to Teacher Talk, Melinda Hurt. And if you will remember, Melinda is no stranger to our Teacher Talk conversations. She joined us at the beginning of the school year to be welcomed to ROE 47 and her new role as high school principal in the district. And so we're anxious to catch up with her as well. So Jenna, I'm going to start with you and put you on the spot and have you introduce yourself to our Facebook community. And by the way, actually, you are no stranger to Teacher Talk either. When we were in pandemic mode, you had your whole setup at home with all the things, and you were kind of giving us a behind the scenes look on math education during the pandemic. So welcome back to Teacher Talk. Why don't you reintroduce yourself to our Facebook community?
Good morning, Stacy. Good morning, Angie. Thank you so much for inviting us on today to share our story. We are so very proud of everything that we've accomplished this year and last year. But as Angie said, my name is Jenna Burkett. I am the principal at AFC Elementary School in Franklin Grove. I have pre-K through 6th grade in my building. And we are small but mighty, let me tell you. We have so many great things going on, and I am just super excited to be here to share just a small snippet of some of the things that have been unfolding here in AFC.
Jenna, I think that's a commitment to another Teacher Talker too. So thank you for setting that up for me. Melinda, how about you? How about you introduce us to yourself and your role? I have to ask you, you were a little kind of timid at the beginning of the school year, but really excited about the year that was to come. Are you still just as excited now that it's May? How are you hanging in there?
Hi there, guys. So my name is Melinda Hurt, and I am the first year principal here at AFC Junior Senior High School. And I would say I'm still excited because there's still new things. I have orientation coming up. I've never done that, and honors night and graduation, all the things. So still learning and still getting to do those new fun things. And it's been a really great year. I've had, the awesome opportunity of learning from and working alongside Jenna, and just growing through this process has been really exciting. I know that school improvement can be scary for some, but I think we're heading in the right direction, and it's really exciting to be a part of it here.
Jenna, let's talk a little bit about the school improvement process. Angie had mentioned earlier that that's something that you guys have been working on. Can you tell us a little bit about how do you start that process? What does it look like within your school district?
Sure. So last year, when I came on board, one of the things that I had heard and kind of in talking with staff and then the other principal at the time was that, we didn't have a formal documented continuous school improvement plan. And so it was a process that they had engaged in previously, but it wasn't like a working document that they had continued to reference back to and keep goals and making sure that goals were being met and, looking at data to see how their efforts were impacting, student learning. And so we decided we had an established teacher leadership team in both schools. And so what we did is we kind of retitled the teacher leadership teams to school improvement teams. And so each building had a school improvement team, and we worked separately at first and going through the Illinois quality framework. We did not have to go through that Illinois quality framework, but we did choose to do that just as a starting point to our conversations. That process took a long time. And so, it was lots of hard work and dedication from both teams to sit down and go through that and kind of talk about what each of those components meant on the framework, and then to produce artifacts, right? So part of our process was to say, well, if we're saying that we're doing this, then we should be able to produce some type of evidence that says, yes, we are doing this. Or if we didn't have evidence, no, we are not doing this. And so that took the better part of the year last year to develop that, to go through that Illinois quality framework. And then from there, we identified using data and other, information from previous years, 2 goals. And so those goals happen to be a math goal and a social emotional learning goal. And that's kind of where, everything got fun. After we identified the goals that we had set for ourselves, we kind of got to dig in and decide, okay, now that we know that this is where we want to start, what are we going to do? How are we going to, quote unquote, fix some of these things that we know is going to have an impact on kids? So we developed the school improvement plan, started with strategies and activities for the school improvement plan. I would say, the process itself was daunting, if I'm being honest, sometimes felt very overwhelming. I think there were times where, conversations would get off task, or we would start talking about things that maybe didn't necessarily relate to the framework. But looking back and reflecting on everything, I think every part of that process was needed. We needed time to just sit down and have a conversation. We needed time to give ourselves grace and say, it's okay that we're not doing this right now. This is where we're at, right? So this is where we are. We know where we want to be. And from there, it just kind of, was easy after that, because we knew what tasks and what strategies we wanted to accomplish. So
I'm going to put you on the spot here for just a second. when you went through that whole process last year and you gave the grace and space for the conversations, what was the reaction of your teachers? Jenna, talk to me a little bit about that for a minute, and then I'm gonna circle back to you, and we're gonna talk about math.
So I think, it was hard not for them not to get stuck in a space of, this must mean I didn't do my job, or this must mean I'm a bad teacher, or this must mean that we weren't doing things right for X amount of years. And so there was that whole oh my goodness, why aren't we doing this? Oh my goodness, should we be doing this? Oh my goodness, why aren't we doing this? But like I said, bringing it back to, this process is all about, where are we right now and where do we want to be, say, in 5 years? And then really just recognizing that it's okay to just chip away at it. We're not saying that we need to have all of these things, done in 1 year's time. We're going to identify those things that are going to have the biggest impact on kids first, and just kind of, what's the saying, with the elephant, small bites out of the elephant, right? So just taking those small bites and one day at a time. And so I think they, at one point in time, they really gave themselves over to the process and trusted in the process, which is a really neat thing to see. And me, myself included, because I was going through this with them. It was my first year, and, just really trusting in the process and leaning on each other and encouraging each other to keep going, I think is really what kind of got us through to the end. And then to have that document in our hands just felt really great. Like, this is what we're going to do. And then holding each other accountable for doing what we said we were going to do. So
Love it. In particular, when you mentioned the fact that you just kept chipping away at it, it was a pretty daunting process, but the conversations that came out of all of that work were incredible. It allowed for a lot of teacher voice. And I love, your reflection on surrendering to the process, because I think, in that moment and then in future moments, that's where you gain the trust and build that culture and climate within the building, within the district. And so hats off to you for that. But we do know that you resulted in kind of a 5-year, you're like, yay, and look at all the work we have to do. And so that again can be very overwhelming, but also very exciting. And so this year, with that math goal, you started in year 1, and worked towards some of those strategies and activities to address what you were seeing with regards to math teaching and learning. So what did that look like? Tell us about what you were up to this year, how teachers responded.
After the school improvement plan was complete, from there, it was just more about continuing to refer back to it. Right. And so one of the biggest things we had identified was a need for a better core resource. And so, we talked a lot about in our conversations, if our core isn't strong, if our core, isn't where it needs to be, then we might be, misidentifying our tier 2 and tier 3 populations of students. So we chose in our school improvement plan to really focus on the core first. And so part of that was going through a curricular adoption process. And so kind of, a plan that stemmed off of the school improvement plan, that we created a 5-year curricular adoption plan. And the two plans, our school improvement plan and our curricular resource adoption plan, they complemented each other. And so some of the strategies and activities that we had identified in our school improvement plan were going to be accomplished through the curricular adoption plan. And because our goal on our school improvement plan was a math goal, one of our goals, we decided to start with math. And so the first thing we did was kind of decide what path we wanted to take. And, staff in AFC were very adamant that they wanted to be a part of the process, which I loved, right? They wanted to own the process. They wanted to have a voice in the process. And so in order for them to be able to have that voice, we felt it was important to build capacity amongst staff to prepare for that selection process. So going into the selection process, we felt strongly that they needed to understand the shifts in math teaching and learning, and they needed to understand what current best practices when it comes to math teaching and learning. And so we spent a week in the last summer, building that capacity with all of our math teachers in preparation for the selection or, piloting a potential math pilot. Probably something that I am so happy that we did was after that week of, I guess I should say during that week of capacity building, we were developing values and beliefs for what we thought math teaching and learning should look like in AFC. And so that whole week, while we were, introducing them to the shifts and we were talking about best practice, we were also simultaneously developing this core list of values and beliefs, because we recognized that learning happened over the summer. And when we came back together in the fall, we wanted to have something to refer back to say, now remember, we said that in AFC, we want our kids to develop strong mathematical language, and we wanted them to be talking to each other during math. And so we could go back to that list of values and beliefs and make sure that the resources we were vetting aligned with those values and beliefs. And so when we came back to school, we started looking at curricular resources using ed reports, and we chose 4 resources that we received samples of. And then we used early outs to really dive into those 4 resources and make sure that they were lining up to our values and beliefs. And then we narrowed it down to 2 from the 4, and then we piloted. And I would say, just talking or hearing, I guess, some of our teachers talk at our last board meeting, they really appreciated that process. They really appreciated being able to pilot. I know one teacher had mentioned, looking at one of the resources, it was my favorite. But then when I started teaching it, it became not my favorite, and with real students in the room with you. And then the other one that she maybe didn't like so much on paper became her favorite when she was teaching it. And so allowing them time and space to try it on, if you will, right? So they tried those resources on with real students and kind of got a feel for what that was going to look like should we choose to purchase those resources. And by the end of it, again, in that process, there was really like a defining moment. And Melinda, you can speak to this a little bit too. There was a moment where you did kind of feel everyone give themselves over to this process, because it was a new process for everyone. And there were a lot of, there was uncertainty, like, are we going to have enough time to make a decision? What if we don't like any of these resources? A lot of what ifs playing out. And it was like, let's just worry about the here and now. And we'll come to that and make and shift and be flexible if we need to be. So by the end of it, they actually had a unanimous decision. And I think they all voted for the same resources, and it turned out really great, and we're very excited to implement next year. But Melinda, you can kind of speak to maybe the high school side of things and how that process looked.
So I came in the summer. I was very lucky. I got to come in before my contract even started. And I remember that first day sitting around the table and you all telling me about this 5-year process. And I think I just helped format the slides, and that was about it. And I just listened. But, it was really a great experience, kind of getting to know teachers through that summer and watching them and listening to why they wanted that to be their beliefs, why that was the thing that they were going to hold on to with curriculum. And then as I started to see it play out, we came together as K-12, but, there was those differences, and we kept seeing them kind of separate. And Jenna and I would, encourage coming back together a lot. And, one teacher would have a voice, and the others, they might say oh, I'll just, whatever everyone else wants, and really encouraging them. Like Jenna said, how will it apply in your classroom for your students? And I don't know if it was years of, I think the whole nation, we're just kind of we want to make the right choices, and we want to do best by kids. And so I think there was some hesitancy, some nervousness. But as that process went on, I think they got more and more confident in it. And once they got to hear what kids thought of it, I don't know how it was for you, Jenna, down at your building, but my students were very vocal about what they thought about the pilot curriculum. And I enjoyed, we had some teachers where every single time something didn't work or it didn't really vibe with how they were trying to learn in their classroom, they would write it down and kind of keep tally so that even the students had some autonomy in helping with that decision. I spoke with a class just yesterday and, or not yet. Yeah. And talked to them about which one we had board approved. And they were like, yes, that was the one that I wanted. That was the one we liked. So just really excited seeing that because obviously those conversations with the teachers in the classrooms of the purpose and why are we doing this and where will it get us? Those conversations were had with the students too. And they felt like they also had a voice. So I thought that was really neat.
You both brought up a couple things that I had mentioned earlier in the introduction of this teacher talk that I actually kind of started working with Angie when I, as a teacher, went through the school improvement plan. And there's a couple of things that I think are super important to say. Number one, I love, Jenna, that you said your teachers wanted to be a part of this. It really can't be something that is just told to the teachers. They really are the ones doing the work and they have to have a say in it. I also thought it was interesting because this was me looking at the curriculum and saying, oh, I like this. And then having to teach it was something completely different. And so that's a very good point if you are a school district that's starting to do this. And Melinda, I love that you're getting feedback even from in the pilot from your students, because ultimately, who is the best at telling us really, are we learning? Is this working? But our students. So that's great. Melinda, I wanted to ask you, in this whole process, there has to be some ups and downs, some challenges, some successes. Are there any that you can speak to and maybe tell us a little bit about how you handled those as you move forward with this?
First, think of during the first pilot, we did what we called learning walks. So Jenna and I would go into different classrooms and just kind of see what was happening. And I think that was a challenge at the beginning. We all know how it feels when the administrator walks in and you're like, what am I doing? I forgot, or I, get tongue tied, and just kind of getting used to being together and learning together. And I think, there was a moment towards the end. I remember we had a teacher that was interning. So she was shadowing Jenna and I. So she happened to be in a conversation. And she just said, I was nervous at the beginning too, but hearing you guys in this conversation, and I think that the teachers see that you guys just really want this to go well for us. And so I think, that process of trusting each other and, me being so new, that adds a different layer for my staff, to trust that we're going through that together. And, that statement of beliefs was the main thing. I remember, those every other Wednesdays when we would come together for the early outs, we would constantly go back to, when there was questions or maybe there was a lack of clarity or maybe even a disagreement of, over which resource, we were able to bring it back to those beliefs. What is it that we believe? What is it that, we as AFC want to see here? And that really kind of set us back on the right track each time. And I know that there was also, we're in two different towns. We're a small rural district. So, that time of coming together and you're out of your space and you're away from your resources, that was hard. But now, I don't see them like kind of scatter off and it's all together. And it's, how does this work in your grade? So I know how it will work once they get to me here. And those are the conversations I get really, really excited to see. I think another success, I felt it really big during that board meeting when they did the approval and a teacher stood up and just told the board how thankful she was that she had autonomy in it. And I know as an educator myself, I was like, yes, that was the goal for Jenna and I, for them to feel like that they were driving and we were supporting. So that was a huge success seeing that. And then I think of, the teacher that's already looking into resources for what's next. And, the ones that are like, I'm still using the pilot. I didn't go back to what I was using before. I think those are huge successes. And just as we step into this next stage, there's not the same kind of nervousness. I think they're already confident. They're ready to roll because they kind of know what to expect and they know what will come from it.
Perfect setup as we close out our teacher talk here this morning. The question looming, what's next? So we have some next steps I mean, the process doesn't end. It's a 5-year plan, right? So we've moved forward with math, and we have some other things that are now cooking in the kitchen. So, Jen, I'm going to start with you. For math, you've been through this process. So you identified priorities, you've gone through and built capacity with teachers. Teachers have been empowered to exercise their voice and try some new things in a very kind of safe way. And now you're looking to implement. So what does that look like as you look towards next school year?
Yeah, so we chose, I don't think we ever said, so we are adopting Bridges at the K-5 level and then illustrative at the 6-12 level. And so what's up next is we are going to, well, we have already planned some opportunities for professional learning this summer centered around those two resources. And so we are going to continue learning our new resources, in addition to starting the conversation for ELA and social sciences. And so originally, the plan was ELA, but I think it's kind of evolved, which I want to speak to that too, because never, our plan was never rigid, right? And so we knew we wanted to have a plan, but we also wanted it to be flexible. We wanted to be able to be responsive in the moment and shift things as needed based on the feedback we were getting from staff. And so part of that is recognizing that, wow, like, especially at the elementary level, if we're spending, say with Bridges, we need 60 minutes for core and then another 20 minutes. So if we're spending 80 minutes a day on core, and now we also need, say 120 minutes for reading, that's not leaving a whole lot of time in our day for other things. And so we're starting to have this conversation of, okay, where can we integrate some of these other areas like social science into other, bridge those things. And so we're not teaching them in silos. And so we're starting that conversation this summer with ELA and social science. We'll provide the same week-long opportunity for teachers who teach reading to build capacity. And then we will focus on math for first semester, just the implementation of our new math resources, but then plan to start piloting for ELA second semester of next year. So we have a lot going on. And I think, to Melinda's point, I think everybody, we are very ready and we are excited, but also like nervous, maybe overwhelmed, feeling like, how is this going to go? Because it is real. And I think that's the thing too, like, we told them, you guys, this is going to be hard. We're not going to sit up here and say like, oh, it's just, here's the plan and we're just going to follow the plan and it's going to be great. Like, no, this is hard work. This is really hard work and it takes time. And, there are moments where you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or I didn't do it that way for X amount of years. So that must mean I wasn't a good teacher. So we went through all of those things and those road bumps. But I think what helped is that from the beginning, we were honest with them about that. And we said, there's going to be a point in time where you're going to feel like you're not a good teacher. There's going to be a point in time where you feel very overwhelmed. But please know that those are all very normal feelings. And what that means is that we're growing together and we are having really great conversations. So we kind of just keep reminding them of this, you guys are doing a great job. We're doing this together. And that seems to be helping, but there is a lot on the horizon. And I think while yes, they feel more comfortable and confident in starting this process with ELA, still having some feelings of, oh my goodness, we're going to be implementing math, but also starting this conversation with ELA and social science. But Melinda and I have all the confidence in the world that we are ready for it. We are blessed with great teachers. So they're going to do great.
That is daunting yet exciting to look forward to. And Melinda, before I wrap us up here, I wanted to circle back. We started this fall, and you spoke to this a little earlier about being new to the process and getting to know the teachers as we were moving into this, kind of 5-year plan. we're kind of, we're in some way, shapes, or form, we are lather, rinse, repeating a little bit with English language arts. And you're now moving into your second year. What are you excited about? Because as a former English language arts teacher, this is something I know you're very passionate about. So what are you excited for as we kind of shift gears a little bit and bring our ELA teachers into the fold?
Yes, I have written down somewhere like this whole process has just been listen, reflect, shift, go again, and I'm really excited, with it being ELA, I'm a little bit more confident of, what K-12 looks like with math. I know what the standards say, and I know those things, but there was a lot of, uncertainty for me too, which I think made it interesting as I kind of went through with my staff, what that curriculum looked like. So that was helpful too, but I'm excited that I think I'll have a better grasp at how I can support my staff. I think that I'll catch some of those things sooner before there's those moments of doubt that maybe I didn't catch before because I didn't know, or, they didn't want to tell me that, they were nervous or that they were feeling like they weren't doing it well. And, I had mentioned to Jenna the other day, I said, at one point or the other, I wanted to slow down or Jenna wanted to slow down, but luckily, between the two of us and our superintendent, we repeatedly nope, it's going the way it's supposed to, because I think, we got nervous for our staff too. We want to protect them. That's why we're in this business, is to be here for students, but also to be there for the people that are leading those students. And I'm just excited that I'll get to that process quicker to support them and support just the students and how they're receiving that information. And yeah, I think it'll be a lot different, but also exciting that it'll be a little bit of the same. And also Jenna and I talk a lot about being very honest with them, that we know that implementing and piloting is different than just piloting. And what it looks like for K-6 and what that looks like for 9-12 is very different too. So really encouraging those two buildings to come together, and how can they support one another in that thinking, in that practice, in the process, because that's a lot of heavy lifting for our K-6 teachers. But then, I look at the implementation for my high school staff, and they're learning 4 different curriculums. They don't just teach that one, being that small rural district. So a lot of just pulling them back together and supporting them is, just excited.
I think if I could just piggyback, I think too, just telling them this is not going to be perfect, right? So there's no such thing as a perfect process. You can read a book about school improvement, or you can read a book about curricular resource adoption, and that all sounds great. And of course, there are things you will pull out of that and you will, put into practice. But at the end of the day, nothing is going to be perfect and nothing is going to be textbook when it comes to this. And what is important is listening to your staff, listening to your teachers, and letting them know that, we're in this with you. And when you're feeling frustrated and overwhelmed, we are also feeling that with you, and we recognize that, and we want to give you space to feel those things, because they're all very valid feelings to have. But also, because we know the job that we do is so important, we have to keep pushing forward, and we have to keep communicating with each other. And so, for anyone, starting this process soon or going through this process, I would say our process was not perfect. It was not without flaw. But what I love so much about our process is that we are so willing to reflect about it, and allow teachers to, give them time to say, okay, what about it did you like? What about it did you not like? What can we change to make it better? And that's really just what we're doing, is reflecting, like Melinda said, listen, reflect, shift, support, right? So those were her words, not mine, but that is what we've done through this process, is just make changes as we go. And it really has turned out to be something pretty amazing. So we're very excited.
Well, we are excited for you. It is always such a joy and pleasure to watch you interact with your teachers, to help them to learn and grow. And I just want to share with you, as you guys were talking, I frequently find myself in this habit of, I love listening, and I just kind of make little notes. And so I wrote down goals, leadership, dedication, teacher capacity and voice, empathy, process. And I wrote down trust because, I think above all, when you zoom way out and look at the conversations that you've had over the last 2 years, you're not only coming back and talking about best practices in education, but you're building the culture. And what a great thing to do, especially coming off of some of those years that we've had that have not been so smooth and we were just kind of struggling to survive. So I so appreciate you giving everyone that grace and space, to allowing for that teacher voice. And irony of all ironies, Miss Jenna, I wrote down in big letters, growing together. So thank you for encouraging and helping your teachers to bloom and grow where they are planted, for always supporting, listening, and encouraging. Our hats are off to you for all of your leadership in this process and growing and cultivating your teachers. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And we are so excited to see what happens next and to be a part of that work and conversation. So thank you. And thank you for taking time out this morning to be with us and share your story here with our viewers on Teacher Talk. Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps us up here on Facebook. We want to say a very special thank you to Melinda Hurt and Jenna Burkett from the Ashton Franklin Center School District, building administrators, and above all, instructional leaders in their school communities, celebrating all of the great things that are happening in district. And hats off to your teachers. Thank you to all of the teachers at AFC for engaging in the process and for welcoming change into their hearts and into their classrooms. We love and appreciate that as well. On behalf of my friend, colleague, and co-host, Ms. Stacy Dingus, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful rest of your Thursday, an even better Friday, a restful, relaxing, and hopefully sunshine-filled spring weekend. And we will see you right back here next Thursday for another edition of Teacher Talk.